Welcome to the third episode of Diversity Matters, a Fireside chat series hosted by PRCA Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Committee. I'm Natashia Jaya, Vice President at Allison+Partners, and also a member of the PRCA ED&I committee. And we have here with us today, Kiri Sinclair, founder and CEO of Sinclair. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kiri.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
While growing in recognition, diversity and inclusion strategies are still lacking among Asia's workplaces. Although some strides have been taken to create a more diverse and equal society with more businesses driving change across the region, APAC as a region still lags behind in considering local nuances and cultural differences and becoming an effective driver of change. In a recent GWI survey, for example, APAC respondents actually scored 10 to 15% below the global average on questions ranging from the importance of equal rights to an interest in other cultures. And according to Google's Year in Search report, while there was a 45% increase in APAC for D&I search terms such as gender equality and inclusive education, other topics such as mental health, race, and financial inclusion still take a backseat. And, another interesting observation is that people tend to have a set of ideas or understanding of what is discrimination. So, for example, if you are of a majority race or religion, you simply cannot be a victim of discrimination. Or if you are a male, all biases are in your favor. So, with this in mind, what are actually some of the key issues around creating a culturally inclusive society and communication industries that really goes beyond the stereotype of discrimination? And so to answer this question, I think we should just go ahead and dive in with Kiri and look at some of these from a very practical perspective. So if you don't mind, Kiri, we like to jump in with the first question. And I think we really want to hear from you. Where do you feel D&I initiatives stand in the region? And in particular, how has that journey been for Sinclair?
Absolutely. And thank you so much. Being invited to speak on this podcast has taken me on a journey of introspection and reflection. And I can tell you it's a very valuable process. Asia has one of the largest workforces, and it's also one of the most diverse regions. So as such, it's really hard to have a conversation about DEI in Asia as a whole. It varies between countries and it varies within countries. Within the cities, especially the global business hubs in Asia, the conversation is much more advanced than in rural areas, and that's due to internationalism and business influences. It's also important for people to understand the cultural, political, and legal perspectives vary across APAC. So each country is quite different, and that there are barriers to workplace equality that are really rooted in historical, political, and cultural factors. So the conversation around DEI in the workplace started much more recently in Asia in comparison to other regions of the world. And naturally, there's a gap when we compare to the global average, as you said in the outline there.
Yeah. So how has that journey been for Sinclair specifically? I think that would be an interesting point of view for a lot of our listeners. Yeah,
I think that DEI journey for Sinclair, we've always strived to have diversity and inclusion at our core. We are independent, we're female owned, so there is a certain diversity at the foundation of our business. But I believe it takes continual work and commitment to ensure that diversity is considered across culture, gender, ethnicity, orientation, age, privilege, ability, physical and mental health, and socio and educational opportunities. There's a lot to consider here. Our teams are located in Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Singapore. And as international cities, there's a general understanding of DEI and its importance. It's considered in our recruitment and HR processes. It's very much a part of our internal operations. For instance, we host learning sessions, we offer opportunities to attend conferences, and we encourage a lot of cross-team engagement. I think that that's really quite important. Most importantly, we have a non-discrimination policy in place, and we're continuously communicating the importance of DEI to our team. It's important to me personally that everyone feels that they're being treated equally and that they're offered the same opportunities and that they feel included. And I believe that the ripple effect, that we can all do our part by encouraging best practice and showcasing what we're doing to others, but at the same time explaining why we're making the decisions that we're doing, that we are in DEI, and also asking for feedback at every single step of the way.
Yeah, and I think being transparent, right, in the process, ensuring that people understand why certain decisions are made are definitely an important part of ensuring that there is equality and inclusion in the workplace.
And I think, change takes time. It takes a cultural shift.
Right.
Both of those are needed for DEI to be realized, and we need to remember it's important, but it can't be forced. For true equality, inclusiveness, and diversity, people have to want to change. And I'd say in Asia as a whole, we're in that awareness stage, and perhaps in a consideration phase at this point. We have to take into account that there are regions that have been focused on this for decades, and to some extent Asia's playing catch up, but I do think that we can all learn from the successes and failures from the other parts of the world, and that's going to help us move the needle in Asia. But it takes continual leadership, learning, locally relevant examples for us to see a greater rate of change. And I really do hope that what we're doing at Sinclair helps to show those examples that it can be done, as much as we're trying to do it through a proactive approach to addressing it.
Yeah, and I guess if you don't mind, we want to hear from your personal standpoint also, right? As you, a female leader in Greater China's communication industry, what challenges have you faced personally when it comes to cultural inclusion and equality in the workplace? And would love to hear some of your stories on that front as well.
Yeah, it's it's an area that is so important. I think it's always important to share our lived experiences when we're discussing DEI. It's what forms and shapes our understanding and viewpoints, and it's also highlights what our own personal biases are. So I'm a Hong Kong born white female. My parents are originally from the US and New Zealand, and having met and married in Hong Kong, they always called Hong Kong home. And I always learned to call Hong Kong home. I knew no difference. From a young age, my sense of identity, that as a Hong Konger, really confused people. And I felt constantly misunderstood because of it. I was often defined as an expat or a foreigner. However, unlike expatriates, I had no other place to call home or go home for the summer, as many others did. And not being British, I didn't fit into the colonial bubble either, although I grew up when Hong Kong was a colony. But for my local friends, on the other hand, I looked different to them. I sounded different to them. I had different cultural traits as well, So yeah, it's interesting to this day when I'm asked, where are you from? I say I'm from Hong Kong, and people respond, no, where are you really from? And my reaction to this still is to restate and to claim my belonging. Having my identity and sense of belonging questioned so frequently, it's taught me empathy, especially towards people that feel different to, or unwelcomed, or excluded. And for that, I'm really grateful. I'm grateful to have that empathy and to have had the experiences I've had that have obviously shaped who I am. Having said that, I don't like to be referred to as a foreigner or expat, but I also acknowledge that there are very few people like me with my background. So I accept that being different from the norm brings questions. It brings a degree of disbelief, but also an opportunity to educate and to share my story. I think, at the beginning of my career, this caused the perception that I was an outsider, or, that I didn't belong. I could feel hurt because of this. But, over the years, I have a lot more acceptance. I understand that people react based on their own knowledges and experience biases, just as I do. And because of the industry that I'm part of, I'm lucky to have the opportunity to positively change perceptions, and show an example from a different side of Hong Kong's vibrant community. I now try to understand that as a white female from a certain socioeconomic status, it's just as important for me to stay open-minded about others' experiences and what is informing them towards their perspectives of me, as for me to try and educate them, right? And yeah, I mean, the other side is moving on to gender, is being a female leader. It's a big part of my lived experience and my story. I joined the workforce 20 years ago, as my wrinkles show. I started my business 14 years ago. And obviously and thankfully, perceptions have changed over this time. But comparing my experiences to those of my male counterparts, I know that I've had to work harder to prove myself, to prove my credibility, to prove my dedication to my profession. I know I've had to give up more than my male counterparts. I'm fortunate that I'm a product of parents that repeatedly told me that I could do anything. And, that shaped my mindset. It made me believe that I am equal to any man in the room.
Right.
And through my parents, I learned to stand up for myself, ignore those that are belittling me, always speak up for myself. And not all women have this foundation. And again, I'm really, really grateful to the women in my family that paved the way for me. This is why initiatives that open opportunities for women are so important to me. Women think and operate differently to men, yet we still work in a workplace that adheres to male constructs, right? I feel we need to do more to create the safe spaces for women to grow their careers, spaces that are comfortable for them, that fit with their agendas and their timelines and their lives. And I feel strongly about bringing more women into the C-suite and into the boardrooms. I think we need to start mirroring our organizations and mirroring our communities at the very highest levels. And we should be working towards leveling that playing field, right across our communities. The gender gap is real. I've lived it. And I believe that we need to look more closely at how we can assist women and girls to get the opportunities that they need to build successful and fulfilling careers. And for us, that starts within the PR and communications industry.
Yeah, I think role models is very important, particularly for women. As you aspire to move up, right, within the comms industry, to be able to see women like yourself, sitting at the leadership position is something that other women can also learn for and follow. So yes, I think agree with you on that front. And I just want to come back to the point of how we all have our own set of biases and perception that's built because of our upbringing and experiences in life, right? And I personally try very hard to be more aware of my own unconscious biases, and how that impacts the way I work with my team, or how we as leaders hire, for example. So in your point of view, how can we be more aware or personally address our own biases against those who can face discrimination? What can we do to be better in addressing some of the biases that we have?
What a fabulous question, and I'm quite sure I won't be able to honor it with a brilliant answer as the question was, but I'll give it a go. Yeah, I think we can address our own biases through awareness of the conversation and true reflection. Our values, assumptions, beliefs, they make up who we are and how we think and feel, but they also create biases. So I think we can check our biases, make ourselves aware of them. Doing this helps us to understand what informs our thinking and our reactions, and it helps us better manage our emotions. You know, why we react to things, what triggers us. I think that when you see a person that doesn't fit your image of what discrimination looks like, and you see them speaking about being discriminated against or excluded, we have to be aware of our own knee-jerk reactions. You know, what does that say about us? That's the first thing we should ask before we're asking what it says about them. You know, what we can do is be open to listening to people. You know, listen to people when they open up to us, and then in return, be vulnerable, at least with yourself. Afford that person the same level of sympathy and empathy as you would anyone else. It takes, like, it's easy to invoke a cancel culture when you see someone who has it all, complaining of being disadvantaged. What's harder is to try and understand where they're coming from, and you know what led them to think this way. Yeah, I think that we have to remember everyone can face discrimination. At the same time, everyone has unconscious bias to some degree. It's human nature. The question is, how do we address this within ourselves and encourage other people to look at themselves, you know, encourage them to do that within themselves. Yeah, externally, how can we, by example, help to eradicate these biases in the wider community? Acknowledging there's work to be done at all levels across society to educate and build a more equal community is the first step, right? Like acknowledging there is a problem. I think once we can acknowledge it, we can start to address it. So, you know, we mentioned storytelling, role modeling, advocacy, learning and training. You know, these are all actions that can be taken. These are all things that we can do to start the change that's needed and continue the change that's needed. And we have to have a level of courage when we see discrimination. We have to be willing to call it out, even when it's uncomfortable. That's, you know, that's how we become part of the change, how we take action towards change, you know, within our own organizations and within our circles of influence. Educating at all levels, from the home to the classroom to the workplace and beyond, it's essential. You know, an example of brilliant advocacy is the Women's Foundation's video called Flipping the Script. It's about gender diversity on boards in Hong Kong specifically. And it presents three leading women, three leading business women, and the women interview men. Men it used to interview us, kind of using the language that men have used towards women over the years. And it's a really funny video, but it's also so very true. You know, I related to so much of it, as I'm sure many business women did. And the way that they use storytelling to help people understand different perspectives and to relate to them is superb. It's really superb. Yeah. You know, when you asked about cancel culture, which is a very uncomfortable subject for many people, and I think it's almost the easy way out, isn't it? You know, there are examples of people who are consistently acting a certain way that should be admonished, I'm sure. But putting people in a box as racist or sexist or such following one instance or example doesn't seem right either. I think what takes courage and leadership is to work with people to help them change their mindset and to show them the flaws in their thinking. And I think, that's what the Women's Foundation's video does. It helps to change the mindset and show flaws in thinking. Another example, and again, storytelling is what we do. So through examples and stories is how we learn, and how we as communicators communicate.
Yeah.
But I think that we should encourage people to have experiences that take them out of their comfort zone, and we break biases through those personal encounters. So, take the homeless, for example. I've seen people quickly changing their mindset about homelessness in Hong Kong by going out and talking with individuals that are experiencing homelessness and understanding more about them and their circumstances. Again, it's that encouraging people to have experiences that are going to break the biases within them. And without those experiences and examples, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. No, I think it's good to your point about raising awareness and taking action in addressing it or admitting it, and then finding ways to address it, are all important roles that we all can play as individual. And I think what we also want to hear from you is, from a company point of view, if you want to look at implementing a more culturally inclusive environment, for example, for your employees, what are some of the actions that you can take? And these could be like very initial starting points that we all can learn from or take actions towards. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I believe strongly in creating workplaces that are psychologically safe. I've worked in toxic environments, and I would not wish that on anyone. I think DEI must start at a leadership level, be part of organizational policy, but it also needs to be culturally instilled in organizations, team by team, manager by manager. And this takes time, it takes action, it takes training. And the time for change is now, the facts are in. Strong DEI in the workplace equates to happier teams and better business results. It's been proven time and again. So, from the business level, let's say, from the organizational level, start by understanding where you are as a business when it comes to DEI. Do an audit almost. Review policy and processes with DEI in mind. Do they need to be changed?
Right.
Consider unconscious bias training for all your division leaders and your, and your top managers. We don't know what we don't know, right?
Right.
Align your values, your company values, and your policy, making sure that DEI is at the center, and then set goals, set KPIs, track them, track the change, celebrate the change as it happens, create platforms for employees to educate themselves and each other on DEI practices. Ensure that feedback is a constant and sought after part of the process. Don't just wait for feedback, ask for it, push for feedback. And the goal is to ensure that DEI is ingrained into every single part of the organization, from hiring to learning and through each and every everyday activity that takes place. And then so the other side of it is from the point of view of the individual, the leader themselves, and people themselves. I think that a leader can actually make change happen through promoting a culturally inclusive mindset, and through the way that they signal to their colleagues on a daily basis through their verbal and non-verbal communications and their actions. By asking people how they are in meetings, by encouraging discussion and conversations amongst different subgroups within the organization, and external parties, by being aware of how you show your emotions when people think differently to you, or disagree with you. You know, they say a tolerance for candor leads to a true feedback and opinions, right?
Right.
And I mean, that's couldn't be more true today. I think that leaders and businesses can provide opportunities for people to experience things beyond their bubble, open their eyes to another way of thinking, from small things like celebrating holidays of the different cultures within your organization to encouraging employees to interact more widely. Yeah, from a leadership point of view, I believe it's our responsibility. It's our responsibility to ensure that these opportunities for personal expansion and experiences are available and that they're encouraged. I think it's important for us to be investing in them. I also think that in a nurturing way, we can help people to see their biases, you know, as they are expressed in the workplace, and that we can, although it's difficult and takes a level of bravery to address, we can help them to be aware of their own biases and address those biases. As leaders, that is our role. Yeah, and just going back to role modeling, we also have to acknowledge and be upfront about acknowledging that we have as much work to do as anyone else, and that we are working towards, you know, showing that we are working towards improving ourselves as well is really important.
Yeah, it really starts with us as individual, right?
Yeah.
Leaders, and even if you're, you know, within a team or part of the team members, it's also important for us to start being more cautious about what we say, what we do, and how does that impact another person. It all really starts with ourselves and the actions that we take. So I think that, yeah, really, really good point there. And I think if just one last question for me, you know, and this is slightly more for our committee, you know, the PRCA ED&I committee is working towards creating a charter for the industry across APAC. What is one thing that you strongly believe should be captured in this charter?
Fantastic question, and I'm so glad to hear about this initiative. I think it's really important work, and you know, thank you for doing it. While there are many things that I think need to be considered through this charter, personally, one of my top priorities is seeing the gender gap being finally addressed. This is not only in terms of the pay gap, but also in terms of opportunity, promotion, share of voice, consideration, flexibility, and so forth. To me, that is a hugely important step that that we can take as a industry, as a profession, and as you know, a regional community.
Okay, we'll take note of that. And then you know, just, I know I said last question, but just to wrap up, if I can have one more question and take a little bit of your time, you know, what would be one thing that you would leave with our listener that will, you know, inspire them or motivate them to get started on their D&I journey?
All humans are equal no matter what. Diversity is beautiful. I was always taught by my parents that each and every individual is equally important, whether they be the CEO or the person that sweeps the streets, and that they deserve respect, they deserve our thanks and gratitude, and they deserve kindness. I think also that we all need to be open and receptive to change. So I guess my call out is to push yourself to move out of your comfort zone. Moving out of the comfort zone, it builds strength, and strength is what's really required to create the change and to build the diversity, equity, and inclusiveness we're looking for in our profession and in our region. Yeah, thanks.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and for spending time with us on this third episode of Diversity Matters. And to everyone who is listening into this conversation, to our audience, we do want to hear from you. So please do share your thoughts with us. You can email, DM, or even just comment on the conversation. And we'll be more than happy to pick up on some of the things that you want us maybe to bring up in our future episode as well. And of course, feel free to also share this conversation with your friends and colleagues. And we look forward to seeing you at our next episode. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Natashia.